Hello, my name's Matt Colebourne. I'm the CEO of Searchmetrics, and I'd like to talk to you today about how you're probably sitting on one of the most valuable sources of data that you're not currently using to make strategic business decisions. At Searchmetrics, we supply the Searchmetrics suite, our platform, as well as services, and critically these days, intelligence built from search data. And we supply this at the moment to around 1,000 clients, many of them blue chip, as you can see on this slide. I'd like to, if I may, take a step back and say, okay, how did we get here? Why does this work? So this is the high street. This is the high street of probably 10 years ago, maybe even the high street of 2 years ago before the pandemic hit. But as we all know, there was already a shift towards digital commerce, and that's only accelerated during the pandemic that we've just gone through. And so I would put it to you that the current high street looks a lot different. And it looks very different because we've lost a lot of well-known names. Woolworths has been around, I believe, for over 100 years. It's no more. Behemoths of the high street like Topshop, Topman, all gone. Why? What's changed? And this really is what the new market or high street looks like. It's the places, and it's not just Google, where people are searching to make purchases. They're searching to do various other activities. But this is the modern high street, the modern marketplace. And if that's the modern high street marketplace, then just as you have the winners and the losers in the physical space, you have exactly the same in the digital space. Page 2 of Google or any search engine is fundamentally the back street. That's where a lot less audience is going to end up. It's where you're not really going to get seen. And if that's bad enough, then page 5, you're round the back with the bins. And page 10, well, maybe you're lucky and a camel will wander by and buy something, but I certainly wouldn't want to bet my business on it. So, using our analogy of the high street, what are people doing? Well, unsurprisingly, they're doing exactly what they did before with the physical high street. There's people who are there making a conscious decision, they're looking to buy something, and if they're anything like me, I'll probably go into the first store that I find, I'll buy what I set out to buy, and then I'll head off home. On the other hand, if it's my partner, probably it's going to be a little bit of a longer trip. We'll wander into a few stores, we'll try some things on, and then we'll probably go back, being honest, to the first store that we went into. But we're all familiar with this kind of behavior, various intentions that people have as they go down the high street. And guess what? This is absolutely mimicked in the digital space. You've got people comparing prices. You've got people looking to find out. You've got people just saying, hey, I want to see that. That's new. Not seen it before. Tell me about it. And this is really important for businesses because nowadays growing a business is really a matter of either you grow or you die. Quite frightening statistic actually of the 100 largest New York Stock Exchange companies 30 years ago, 50% that did not grow were no longer existing 20 years later. And I just want to make it clear, these are businesses that were making money. They were delivering returns for shareholders, but they weren't growing or they weren't growing fast enough. And they're either gone or they've been acquired. So as businesses, This has only accelerated the modern world. We see far, far greater change. Look at the list of the companies we just showed that are no longer on the high street, and several of them have been swallowed up by digital businesses. So great. We all agree we need to grow. It's really important, and without that, we're going nowhere as businesses. But unfortunately, it's not quite that simple, because there are a few 800-pound gorillas, or in this case, very large sumos wandering around that don't make life easy. And I'm going to cheat here, and rather than say my own words, I'm stealing unapologetically from McKinsey & Co, because they made a very, very solid point. So growth, we need to achieve growth, but a lot of companies make the mistake of optimizing for growth way too soon. They settle, for example, for their current book of business, their current product set, and their intention becomes, okay, how can we optimize sales of what we have? Whereas perhaps the question they should really be asking is, what are the sales that we could have? How much of our target market do we really have right now? A good example would be companies that are in rapidly growing markets, where they look at it and they go, hey, we're growing, it's great, it's fantastic. And it is, but if you're not growing at least at the same rate as the market, then actually you're losing market share. You're not doing a good job, despite the perception that things are going in the right direction. So it's really important to identify where is growth to be had today and where is it likely to come tomorrow, whether that's selling products into an adjacent market or whether it's selling more product to your current market. The point is to understand the detail of where you're going. And again, that sounds pretty simple until you remember that currently about 15% of search terms that appear on Google every month are new. They've not been seen before. So that starts to give you an inkling of the pace of change that we have to deal with now. We see trends come and go in months, and in some cases even weeks. And as businesses, we have to respond to it. So the question is, where is your growth going to come from? And in order to do that, first of all, you've got to understand how your industry and category is structured, because you've got to ask the right questions. If, for example, you sell specialist sports shoes, it doesn't make a lot of sense to compare yourselves with Nike or Adidas or similar companies who have clearly much, much bigger coverage, but may well not be leaders in certain niche segments or markets. You also need to understand how your customers navigate, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. Where the profit pools are, where are the ones that currently exist that you can grow, and where are the potentials, and what trends are emerging. Because if you can get there first on a trend, as is usually the case, the top 2 or 3 in any given space are going to do the best, they're going to take the majority of the profit to be had. So we have to look carefully, and we've got to get granular. It's important. Granular is important because the devil is in the detail. If you're selling sports apparel, for example, you don't want to get confused by people looking to watch a football match. Whilst they may well be a strong degree of overlap, clearly there is a difference. And just because somebody some people or a large number of people are watching a match doesn't mean that suddenly the demand for football boots or balls is suddenly going to shoot up. So, what am I saying? In 2019, Alpha did a study on decision making. They asked 300 managers a series of questions regarding how they made decisions. And the question they put was, how important or not important is it to you to use data to make decisions. And I think nobody here is going to be surprised about the results. Everybody said that it was really important. 91%. 91% think data-driven decision making is important. Now, I have to report on the question as asked. In practice, I would say data is less important. Intelligence is more important. The transformation of data into intelligence is actually a very important point. But in the interests of brevity, we'll keep the presentation on track. But the corollary to this question was, okay, so 91% say data is important. Obvious question then is, okay, so how frequently or infrequently do you actually use that? "58%. 58% actually practice that. Why? What's getting in the way? What is stopping people from doing that? Seems a bit strange, doesn't it? But actually, when we look at it, we start to see some fairly obvious impediments to using data. Don't have access to the data. Somebody else has got a strong view of how things are and isn't really open to being questioned on that. Or there's just too much deliberation. By the time you've got round to making the decision, the data's out of date. But the number one was a lack of quality data. So let's think about that. This is data about purchase intent, about research, about brand, about interaction, about learning. 65% of all e-commerce sessions start with a Google search. Which I would argue makes it a very, very good source for decision making. Massive sample set, completely up to date, and continually new, continually refreshed. So let's accept that that is indeed a very strong source, and that SEOs, probably uniquely in an organization for once, have got access to the best data that is available to tell you about the market and where the market is going. And what we've done at Searchmetrics is we've launched a new component in our suite called Searchmetrics Insights, which is all about using search to generate insights, to generate intelligence into the market. Now, let me challenge something first off. A lot of people think search data is keywords, rankings, search volumes, product and category data. And of course, at a fundamental level, at a granular level, it is. But if you think about it more deeply, what it actually is an unbiased indicator. Right? Nobody's telling people what to search. Now, they may be being subject to advertising, PR campaigns, outdoor banners, all kinds of other mechanisms encouraging them to search for particular products or services. But what we're seeing when people enter in a search is something that is very individual and is not really forced. We're seeing what they really do remember. And that's important because what that allows you to do is to take the search volume and the nature of that search, whether people are looking for information or they're looking to make a purchase or they're looking for some kind of transaction, and that data, sensibly managed and processed, can actually tell you the target addressable market and give you the consumer demand. And it can give you that consumer demand over time. So it can show you, is the market growing or is it contracting? What's the seasonality? Is that seasonality month to month, week to week, or a combination of all of those factors? What it also does, if you think about it, is allow you as a business to step outside your sandbox. it's very easy to assess what your current customers are doing. Why are they buying from you? How did they reach you? Because you can ask them. But to use an analogy, let's imagine you're running a coffee shop. Yeah, you can go and chat with your customers and say, oh, did you see my advert in the local paper? Did you respond to a digital ad? Did you find me on Google Maps? You can ask them the question, and you can ask them as well what they like about your store, and you can do more of that and hopefully do better. But actually, in order to fully understand the market, you probably need to go 2 streets down and ask the people in a competitive coffee shop why they ended up there. And then if you really go beyond that, you might understand that there's 4 coffee shops in your town and you've only got, say, 18% of the available traffic. Suddenly you have a much better understanding of where you are in the market. And that's what this kind of analysis gives you, because we're all very focused on keywords and rankings and all these good things that we know how to manage. But actually what we really need to do is to step beyond that and say, let's not just look at what we've got. Let's not look just at what competitors have got. Let's look at the totality of the market. Let's look at the input search data in order to understand what the real demand is and how big this market is. We want to know who, why, what, how, when, all of these questions as soon as possible. And we absolutely want to make sure that we, the who, are in front of our customers, that we don't have other people ahead of us in front of our customers. And as we then move into more SEO language, what content is actually driving customers to become a potential customer, but not just in our sandbox, across the whole of the market. And that then leads us to questions such as, well, when should we put a product on sale? How much inventory are we likely to need? When should we market? I mean, it's very easy. We have the Christmas rush. Lots of people put marketing campaigns around that. And that's a nice, simple and easy one. And major sporting events similarly. But we all know that the world is full of trends, things that we can't predict. And those are happening all the time, and we need to respond to them. Those trends that come and go really fast are an opportunity, but only if we can take them. And of course, if there's any kind of production lag, we really need to know that. The old model, particularly in things like fashion, of course, is completely gone. The whole season thing, and weeks, months in advance, people know when certain sorts of products are going to be there. But now we're talking to people, for example, making ski wear and saying, well, actually, no, you don't want to put all your ski wear in the stores up until the end of the year and then pull it out again. Now we can say to them, well, we see a different behavior. People are booking ski holidays much later in the season. They're responding to snow conditions or other opportunities. That means we need to have those products available for them to buy much longer in our stores than we thought. And that simple decision is something that could potentially make a large retailer tens of millions in additional profit. So essentially what we're saying is, in amongst all these well-known names that go out and research in the market and provide great data, not knocking them in any way, we're saying that search data and the intelligence that can be derived from it is at least as powerful and arguably significantly more. Bigger sample size, much more up to date, and last but not least, much truer. And the reason I say that is because if you ask people questions, most research suggests that they're not always entirely truthful. They have a tendency to tell you what they think the answer should be or how they would like to be perceived. Whereas when people are entering search terms, they have to be honest, because if they don't specify what they really want, the results will not be what they want. So you have a true situation where people are saying exactly what they want rather than what they think a researcher wants to hear. And here's a very simple example. We're talking here about personal body care products, and you can see that this categorization I was talking about, it may be that we only care about certain categories within this space. But here, for example, we're showing the total demand by month, the demand by year, and how that seasonality is impacted. And you can start to see exactly what I was talking about, and then overall trends. And here, again, this is a growing market. So what I'm saying is that as SEOs, we're probably sitting on, with a bit of help to analyze it and derive intelligence, the best data-driven decision-making tool. Let's look at some examples. So building supplies, US market, absolutely dominated by one player. Other markets, much more nuanced. Let's look at fireplaces. Don't ask me why, but with winter coming up, perhaps we're all thinking of staying warm. You can see here the data from 3 different territories. And you can clearly see that the spikes are really quite excessive here, and why they tend to be. Now, you may well ask the question, hang on, that's a bit strange. So we're seeing lots of events that are generating extremely high demand. And we're also seeing that the US market, around about 2017, overtook the German market for fireplaces. Interesting information, but something looks a little strange, a little interesting. And I kind of gave you a hint. But what we can see is that actually the US market is more associated with electric fireplaces, which can be used, unsurprisingly, to prepare turkeys. So you're seeing something that makes sense. When we look at it in retrospect, we go, hang on, now we can see that that makes sense, and we can see how the trend moves. But you can also see how the German and the US market are completely different, because the detail of the product is actually fundamentally different. So understanding the market is incredibly important. And also understanding the dynamics. So we kind of skipped through it, and we said mostly let's use intelligence and categorize our traffic by market, subcategory, etc. But it's also important to categorize it by what people are trying to do. If you remember the picture right at the start where I showed the high street and we said we had the tire kickers. Well, it's not necessarily a tire kicker, but if I'm going to go and buy some cable ties to tidy up my home, that's not a major decision. I'm probably going to look for that, and then I'm going to buy them straight away. If, on the other hand, I'm looking for a major electrical power transformer for a construction, then I'm going to spend a significant amount of time looking for information. And as SEOs, of course, we've got to get the right content in front of those people that meets their needs. If we try and immediately take the transformer people into a sale, the likelihood is they're not going to spend any time with us, they're not going to engage. So this again speaks to timing. As people go through a purchase process, we need to understand how long that process takes and what are the steps. Do people very quickly go into a transactional, yes, I'm going to buy something, or do they actually take significant periods of time and need to be cajoled along the way, and you need to build a relationship with them? So huge amounts of complexity, incredibly valuable data source. And fundamentally, if we get this right as an industry, what it allows us to do is to move to some degree beyond SEO, to move into optimizing for demand rather than optimizing for search result. And the search result, if we optimize for demand, will give us what we need, because we'll have the right product for the right people at the right time and with the right content. So I hope you've enjoyed this presentation, brief though it is. Please don't hesitate to contact us. My name is Matt Colebourne. I'm the CEO at Searchmetrics. Look forward to speaking to you, and thank you very much indeed for your time.